All right, today's podcast, it is all about parenting. And if you've watched our show on Fox 59, you know I'm not a parent, so I have absolutely no expertise on this. But having been in the business, it's kind of odd because I see a lot of young people come and go. They start off single, maybe they end up married, then they become parents. And the cool thing is you get to watch them and watch how they change and also what kind of parent they become. Especially, if they're younger or they're older, it just really depends. So today's podcast is about what kind of parent you are, if you know, recognizing it, and if you want to make a change, how to go about doing that. And you're not going to get the information from me, but you are going to hear from an expert, and that is Amanda Hill, our therapist here in our studio. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Now, you're a parent as well, right?
I am. I have two kiddos, 18 and 16 now.
Did you take somebody else's advice, or did you kind of like figure this out on your own? Just curious.
I'm a reader, so when I had my daughter, I started reading, and the good thing is there's a lot out there for parenting. Of course, I had the mental health background, but I definitely did a lot of reading on it.
Get a little closer to that mic.
Okay.
We want to hear you better than we want to hear me. Oh, okay. There you go. Now we have perfect resonance for this big show.
There we go.
Go ahead and tell me a little bit about your experience. You also have a business here and several different ones, right?
Yeah. So I run a mental health private practice. We have 5 different locations. Getting ready to open another one up in Anderson, but I've been doing therapy for 20 years, got my master's in counseling, and I see clients as well as managing the business, and raising kids.
And the business is called?
Connections of Hope. That's probably important.
And when people come to you guys, is it local in a given office? Is it teletherapy, a combination?
When people reach out, and you can reach out via our website, fill out an intake, we tend to ask what city you live in, and then we'll match you to a therapist either closest to you, or we do offer telehealth. So if someone doesn't want to come into an office, we can do it virtually.
Let's start with, in terms of this parenting, I'm curious, why does it really matter to know what kind of parenting style you may be part of?
So the reason why that's important is because the way we parent our children actually plays a huge role in how that child then grows up to see themselves, to see the world around them, and to understand other people. So if we're parenting our kids, maybe we're unaware, but in ways that are not healthy for them, it will negatively affect their self-esteem, their ability to manage conflicts that come their way in life, and of course, the way they handle relationships.
Yeah, it just makes sense. If you don't really know what you are, then it's kind of hard to pinpoint it and therefore then take action. The first one is, and I think I can guess what this means, authoritarian parenting.
Yes. So I always say my way or the highway. With authoritarian parents, I always, again, refer back to like traditional parenting. So my parents are 80, and this is the way my parents parented. I think it is very common back in the day that this is how we did that. So with authoritarian parenting, we're just looking at parents who have very strict rules and boundaries, and there isn't really room for movement there. So it's my way or the highway. I don't want you to come back and disrespect me. This is what I said to do. Do it.
Kind of think of it as like the old sitcoms in the 50s or 60s, the Leave It to Beaver, that type, that were one-dimensional, and you better, obey Dad especially.
Yes.
And Mom, who will turn you into Dad.
Yes, I always feared that. If my mom was like, I will punish you, I will discipline, but if it's bad enough, your dad's going to know when he comes home. And I was like, no one wants that. But yes.
So now that we know what that is, I would assume there have to be some advantages to that style, or at least, maybe that style light.
Yeah, absolutely. So the advantages of authoritarian parenting is that there are very clear boundaries. And what's a benefit for kids in that regard is that they know right from wrong. There's no question of like, maybe I'll get away with this. They just know like, no way. My dad would not. My mom would not let me do that. And that creates a sense of safety for a child, which is what we want them to have. So there is consistency with that parenting and a very clear line of what I can and can't get away with, which again provides safety for those children.
Yeah, and so then, therefore, what are the downsides? You kind of know where you're at, but at the same time, it's almost feels like it separates you from your child in terms of it's my way. There'll be no, conversations regarding it, and that's it.
Yeah, so it's pretty easy for the parents to do that because you kind of running the ship and it goes the way you want it to. The unfortunate thing is for kids where my parents give me strict boundaries, which is great. I feel safe, but I don't learn to have a voice. And so there's not validation of feeling or a space in which a child feels like they can come to you and ask questions about why. What that problem is later in life is then that kid goes into adulthood and they don't know how to speak up for themselves. It creates a lot of anxiety for kids because the world is not authoritarian as much, right? We have a little more freedom. And so they go out into the world and they're not prepared for that.
I know there's not necessarily any statistics on this, and we haven't covered the other two yet, but what percentage would you think nowadays are authoritarian type of parents? Like a third, a half. I know when I was a kid, it was like
Most.
I tell you what, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. You will go outside, and when the
Yes.
street light comes on,
I'll see you back.
you will come back inside because there's no cell phones. There was none of that stuff.
Yes. And my mom had 6 kids, so even six. Yeah, I don't know what was wrong with her, but 6 kids. So we same thing. Out in the morning, play. There was no like dilly dallying around inside. Maybe to come in and eat and then go back out. It was like get outside, and I'm so thankful I had that, honestly. But yeah, today I probably would see I'd say it's pretty low, maybe a quarter, maybe a third of people that are authoritarian.
Yeah, especially maybe now if you're a 40-year-old, maybe your parents are,
Right.
but not necessarily you. The second one, I think it's more of the parents for the Gen Z, maybe the Gen Y, or as they call millennials, and that's permissive parenting.
Yes.
Explain that one.
That is the one we see more than anything now. So at least, and I might be I'm not biased, but in my field, right, I'm seeing more people who are having issues. So that might be why I see more permissive parenting. But what this means basically is I just want my child to be happy. And that's great. We do want our kids to be happy. The problem is we're not supposed to be our kids' friends. And going back to the authoritarian parents, what they do is they create very healthy boundaries. And in other words, that creates a safe kind of bubble for your kids. With permissive parenting and wanting to be your kid's friend, what you're doing is as your kid is born into this bubble, kids are developmentally supposed to push boundaries. That's just what we do. What can I get away with?
I'm an adult and I still do it.
Right? So kids are going to push the boundary, push the boundary, push the boundary. Well, if I'm a permissive parent, then eventually, and I was, my parents were young, I was exhausted at times. The parent's like, okay, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
As soon as you give that up, that, you let them push that boundary, at that one time, it could be 27 times that they ask you in the 28th time, that kid learns subconsciously, if I push enough, I'm going to get my way. Well, that's great for the kid in that moment, or at least that child thinks so. But in the long run, what you're doing is you're allowing your child to then get pushed into a world where they're not developmentally ready. And that creates a feeling of unsafe. They feel unsafe and they get into things that they shouldn't get into. And then obviously a whole host of issues come from there.
So do they just go into these prospective parents or current parents as permissive parents? Do they grow into it? How does it happen that they become permissive parents?
Most of us pick up parenting styles from what our parents did, right? But then that you question that because it's like if most of us, like me, I'm in my 40s and my parents were authoritarian. Am I authoritarian? I think I was authoritative. I tried to be, which we'll talk about next. But we tend to pick up what our parents did, and or someone who's a permissive parent might have had super authoritarian parents and hated it and just didn't have a good relationship with their parents. So they've vowed to themselves, I am not going to be that parent. And they take it to a whole other level. And parenting's a spectrum, but they end up being overly permissive.
So In terms of saying no, is that something they just are trying to avoid? They don't want to be the bad guy. They want to be their best friends. I mean, how's that, basically come to be?
Permissive parents, what I see more than anything is they do say no. They just don't stick to it. So
They say no once or twice.
yes. And, and then there are some parents who don't say no. But normally the parents who don't ever say no end up on the whole other side of parenting, which is more neglectful, right? Because our kids need us to say no sometimes. The permissive parents do it, they try it, but then they get tired. The kids are going to push and they get tired and don't want to fight it anymore, so they just give in.
So I'm curious because they want to be, happy, their best friend or what have you. But I assume, and you kind of touched on it there, can this also create, being a permissive parent, insecurity in the child?
Absolutely, because when a permissive parent has an environment with no rules, then again, that child is pushed into a world that they're not developmentally ready for, and that creates that level of insecurity. These kids tend to get into trouble, and I think more than anything, what we see is permissive parents in the schools, especially now, try to rescue their children. So they are, my kid back, says something inappropriate to a teacher or does something at school that they should get disciplined for. The teacher calls, and guess what happens with a permissive parent? They go in and they back up their child, as opposed to going in and grabbing their child and saying, you should not do that, you're going to apologize, there's no punishment. So then that child learns, like, I can get away with anything, and they go back into the adult world, and that's not the case. You're going to lose jobs, you're going to get fired. But we see a lot of that rescuing kids as well with permissive parents that's not healthy.
So basically, the only one in a case like this is the parent is the one who's accountable. And then, as you're mentioning, when they get out into the real world where their parent won't take all the blame for everything they're doing, then they go up against an employer who says, you don't deserve this. You got to work for this. You're going to get punished when you do, wrong versus right.
Yeah. And then, I've talked to a lot of employers, and it's really difficult to keep, when we get into this generation of kids, to keep it, the turnover is high. So it is hard for employers to keep people because as soon as things don't go my way, I'm going to quit.
Yeah.
And that doesn't bode well for anybody long term.
No, and the younger generation, it's replete with that. All right, we have one more type of parenting. We're going to get to that after the break. And also, we're going to talk about if you're a type that you don't want to be, some of the negatives, how you can go about changing that. So we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm John Maxwell. If one paycheck carries your entire household, you may at times feel uneasy because one surprise can change everything. Good people live like this for years. They work harder, they cut back, they try to be responsible, they still feel stuck. Why? Because effort without a plan becomes stress. Wealth Surge is hosting a complimentary in-person event in your area. In 90 minutes, their experienced team shares real estate and stock trading education so you can understand your options and start building additional income streams with discipline and integrity. My friend, this is your turning point. Stop waiting for life to change. It's time to take initiative. It's time to take action. Pick your session and register. Then add it to your calendar and be ready.
That's the sound of an American oil company hard at work. Want to be a part of it? Listen up.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, and I'm the CEO of Phoenix Energy. I look forward to you joining us at our next webinar where you can drill deeper into our bond offering. We currently offer 2 investment opportunities, a private placement bond offering for accredited investors with target annual interest rates between 9 and 13%. Also, we offer a registered bond offering open to both accredited and non-accredited investors with rates ranging from 9 to 12%. Our daily production rates have risen as high as 39,000 barrels of oil per day. We've sold more than 10 million barrels, and we're just getting started. Sign up for the webinar and start your journey with Phoenix Energy today.
Welcome back to our podcast on parenting. And no, I'm not a parent, but I know a lot of parents, and we have an expert on this and on many other things as well. It is therapist Amanda Hill. She joins us once again. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
All right, we have already covered the first two types of parenting, and just as a recap, they're authoritarian parenting, which is because I said so, and the second one is permissive parenting, which is what do you say? Do what you want almost?
Yeah, I mean, there's not really any rules. I want my kid to be happy, so I'm just going to let them do whatever they want.
All right. And the third one sounds like the first one, but it's not authoritarian parenting. And I got to read this to make sure I don't mess it up. It's authoritative parenting. What is that?
So this is what we want to aim for. And the difference between authoritarian and authoritative is that authoritative parents have very clear rules and boundaries, but they provide an environment where their child has a voice and can share their concerns or ask questions. That is the difference. There's validation of a child's emotions, or that I don't like the rule you just gave me, but the rule and the boundary doesn't change.
So how do parents basically balance love and accountability? I mean, you want to do what's right, but you also want to make sure, they're not getting away with something that endangers them even.
So the rules and the boundaries are first, right? And I always use this example of like a 2-year-old that wants to go out and cross the street or play outside by themselves. Do you let them do that? No. I mean, no good parent, no even not good parent typically would let that happen. But we just don't view that in a lot of other parenting decisions. It's the same thing. So I'll use my own example with phones, right? My kids have did have very strict rules with their phones when they were young, because I do all the reading and I know I want to protect their brains. But you turn your phones in at night in my room every night. And my daughter was the one that wanted to fight me on that all the time. And I knew no matter what she said, that rule was going to stay the same, because I know I love her and I want to do what's best for her. However, I gave her the opportunity to present her case to me as much as she wanted to. And I always won those arguments.
Yeah.
But I provided her that space because I want my child to grow up and know how to plead her case in other situations. You want to raise, how are you going to talk to your boss? You don't like how your friend is treating you, how are you going to have that conversation? So providing a space where I listen and I validate your feelings, and then I say, the rule's going to stay the same, but I really appreciate what you had, your thoughts about it. And who knows? I mean, they might plead a case that you're like, okay, I didn't think about that. And, you could change that decision. But you want to allow an environment where your kid can grow.
Do you think they just gave up when you kept saying no with an explanation, or heard your explanation and kind of took it in and started to believe it?
That probably varies per kid. I think that my daughter is 18, so I'm not sure that she's quite gotten to the point where she believes it, that what I said was what was best for her. But I firmly believe in my heart that if and when she has kids of her own, she'll do the same thing.
Parenting in the real world, do you think more of them are this third set, or it's not easy, obviously. I mean, I know of a billion parents, well, maybe not a billion, but I know of a lot of parents, and it just seems like, it's one struggle after another.
It is. And, that is, I think, where it becomes a little easier to be the authoritarian parent, because then you don't have to address every situation separately. It's kind of a blanket statement of what I say goes. It's just not healthy for your child. And then the permissive parents, what I see is they tend to complain more than anything because my child is out of control. And it's like, well, I mean, you might have created that environment, right? You created that child. With authoritative parents, it is hard. You have to stay consistent. What I see more than anything is parents sometimes are not sure if the rule that they have is appropriate or not. And so that's where they struggle and have this inner battle of like, am I being a good parent? Am I being too hard, or am I being too easy? So there's a lot of guilt that comes with parenting too.
Is there sometimes, whether you're a single parent or, you have both parents, or it's a split situation where the kids play one parent against the other, know who's the tougher one or who they might be able to get this passed by? What do you do there?
I mean, that happens a lot. And I see this probably more than anything with people who are divorced. So co-parents trying to co-parent and one kid plays the other. In a marriage, when you have two people, the biggest thing that's important is that you're on the same page. So when I work with a couple or parents, what I say to them is no matter what, in front of your child, you agree. So if we're married and my kid comes to me and is like, I want to go out with my friends, and I'm like, I don't know, ask your dad. And then they go and ask dad, and he's like, I don't know, did your mom say it was fine? It's like we have to be on the same page. And then if we are at dinner and I say, no, you have to eat your vegetables, and then you're like, it's fine, they don't have to eat, that we can't do that. So you have to be a united front as parents. Obviously, that's harder with single parenting, but if the other parent is not involved, single parent, you do what you feel like is best for your kids. When the other parent is involved, there's definitely some challenges there.
So in your practice, do you, have the people come in and you say if their situation is parenting they wanted to discuss, and you talk to them for a while and you figured out, do you tell them what you think the type of parent they are, and therefore try to change it if need be? Or I'm assuming the first thing you have to do is almost diagnose what they are.
It's very easy to see that up front, and I might label it for them, but more than anything, I'm just going to talk about what healthy parenting looks like. So I'm going to teach how we validate, and then also stay true to our rule. More than anything, that is just what I'm doing with parents. It's fighting the exhaustion and the excuses that even parents sometimes will give. Well, but what if my kid doesn't like me? What if I'm just tired? What if it's 10 o'clock at night? Like, it just doesn't matter. It's consistency. If people want to know what kind of parent I am, I can tell them. They can do their own research as well. But as a mental health professional, I have found that when it comes to diagnosing people, that doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters because of insurance and I have to document it. But I normally am not like, you are struggling with bipolar, unless they want to know. I'm really just treating the symptoms and helping them get better. So I would do the same thing with parents.
So whether you're diagnosing, I guess, or labeling, if somebody doesn't like, what they currently are, or you both realize it's not working, how do you go about changing that? Is it a multi-step process? I assume realization is the first thing.
Yeah, being aware that things are not going well. Unfortunately, more than anything, we see parents who bring their kids in for therapy and kind of might not say fix my kids, but are kind of saying, hey, fix my kid. And we do require parents to be a part of that process for these reasons. Our kids are born blank slates, so when they are in our environment, we create the issues a lot of times that they're struggling with or the difficulties that they're having. So as a parent who maybe is looking at this and how they want to improve, we're going to kind of lay out, it's a treatment plan. So step-by-step things that we can do. Any habit does not come easily changed. So it takes time and consistency. And there's another party involved, your child, who, if I'm a permissive parent and my kid has gotten away with everything until the age of 8, it's going to be really hard for me to kind of backtrack on that and be consistent with my rules, because that child is going to fight me to the death because they've learned for 8 years I can do this. So it's the support that really matters. I think, again, lots of resources out there and books on it, but getting a therapist that is well educated to help support you through that, what we could do is just a step-by-step plan and work with you each week as you start to make those changes.
I'm curious because a lot of times when kids grow up and they thought their parents were too tough or too this or whatever, they end up, sometimes thanking their parents for what kind of parent they are. What are you seeing depending on if the parent, gets help or doesn't get help, whether it's the reaction from the child later on in life or the parent later in life?
I will tell you from my own experience that I hated my parents growing up. I was a very rebellious brat as an adolescent.
Well, it's the first step to recovery.
Right? Acknowledge. But I grew up and took so much of what my parents did and used it with my children and just added that validation when we go back to the authoritative parenting. What I see with people who actually are committed to making a change, the parents actually start to, with time, like, I can take a deep breath, like I can sigh of relief, like, oh my gosh, things are falling into place and this is so much better than what I ever imagined it could be. Gets harder before it gets easier. Kids, same thing. They're going to fight it. And then eventually they realize like, okay, this bubble, I'm pushing and it's not giving. And so they get tired too. And then they just kind of follow suit. As they get older, then you do thank your parents because what you realize is everything they did was out of love. Mm-hmm. It wasn't to control you. We're not trying to control our children. We're trying to provide an environment where they are safe and loving them unconditionally. Parents who unfortunately might jump on the wagon at first and want to make some changes, but just don't stay consistent with it, typically what we see is just an increase in rebellion and bad behavior from that child, and parents who just kind of throw their hands up and let it be. And that's super unfortunate. I mean, those are the kids that then maybe don't graduate high school or get into drugs or can't keep a stable job and are very insecure and then become another client of ours, right? So it tends to fall in line. If you're very, very particular about the way you parent your kids, you're doing it because you love them, but you're also doing it for their future. And as a parent, that's what we should be fighting for, is the best future for our kids.
Yeah, if it doesn't happen, it could lead to dysfunction later in life. I think 100%. You've also written a book about that as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. My brain doesn't always work on a Friday when I'm doing this.
It's Making Sense of Dysfunction. I wrote that book just due to kind of my own family dysfunction and kind of figuring out how to manage my family as an adult and all the different personalities. This book does have more to do with the everyday stuff than it does like any kind of chaos or abuse or neglect. So it's applicable to everybody, just because we all have, even if you have a great family, there are issues around personalities and getting along and getting your feelings hurt, which is what I address in the book.
You also have a podcast as well. We're going to talk about your podcast on this podcast because podcasts are the best thing to do.
Amazing, yes. I just started it maybe a couple months ago, and I'm on YouTube. It's Mental Health with Amanda. Also Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on my website, connectionsofhope.com, everything is funneled in there as well.
You can find a link there. Amanda Hill, therapist with Connections of Hope. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Awesome episode. Parenting, the different types of parenting, and how you can change if you want to. A therapist, by the way, obviously helps. Keep it right here.